The Democratic coalition won from Mondani last night to Spanberger. Like, it's a big coalition if you're talking about the economy. Most of the opening is because of Trump's failure. This dude he gave back the Latino numbers last night is a return to 2016 numbers. The Republicans have lost all of their gains. And if they don't learn the lesson of becoming a working class party again, man, like, I don't know what to say.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast, coming from you from a still shut down Washington, D.C., but Democrats are walking around the streets this morning with their chest poked out, looking to want to fight somebody, Mike Madrid.
I owe you a steak dinner, man. You were right on the over-under,
and the crowd goes crazy.
Brother, we may have like a 90-day government shutdown until planes start falling out of the sky. We'll see what's going to happen, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. I think, I'm going to follow your lead on this. You obviously have nailed it. You've got a finger on the pulse. What happens with the election results? I know we're going to get into them, but what happens with the shutdown? Does this make it easier to get a shutdown done or harder?
I think it goes away now. I think that they were waiting for tonight. I think they knew that tonight would go in their favor if they took a gamble. I don't think they really knew, but it did. So I think that this thing is over in the next week, if not two for sure. But I don't think Democrats want kids on government assistance food going without food. I think that that's a bad look for them. Anyway, I think that this thing's over in a week or two, and I don't think that this thing goes very much longer. There are people in D.C. right now, Mike, meeting as we speak in the Senate and the House, trying to resolve this for the first time in a long time.
This has got to change those discussions, though, right? A little bit.
It had started a couple of days ago in thought that this might happen. So I think this helps move it along. I don't think this stops it. Donald Trump this morning has the Republican Senate caucus over at the White House having breakfast, if that answers your question.
Yeah. Trying to figure out what the message is on the escape plan, right? How to take the off-ramp and try to get a victory out of a brutal night. This is a bloodbath. We don't see them this big very often. I mean, the reality was this was an off cycle. It wasn't even the midterms. We'll talk about what this portends for the midterms. There's a good word for you. But it also, the data is undeniable. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of, I'm getting attacked a lot by the crazy ass MAGA right winger saying, well, this is just a blue state phenomenon, blue city phenomenon. That's complete bullshit. I mean, the Democrats were winning plus 20 in Georgia, right? They retained all of the Democratic justice seats in Pennsylvania. There were pickups for Democrats in New Hampshire. There are Democrats in special elections all over the country, from county commissioners and school boards to water boards. Democrats winning plus 24, 25 Trump seats. So this was a good old fashioned ass kicking.
It really was. I'm going to go through the top lines of the races that were the main ones. There's about 8 of them, and then have you comment on the one that stuck out to you the most. Obviously, in your home state, Prop 50 wins. We win all the statewide, the Democrats do in Virginia, and now have 64 House seats. They flipped 13 House seats in Virginia. We'll get to that later. In New Jersey, the Democrats win the governorship there, of course. Mondani wins in New York. We can talk about that. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court that you mentioned. Georgia, the 2 statewide officials in Georgia. In Maine, they voted down a ballot initiative that would have done away with like mail-in voting. When I was up there, I saw all these propositions. And then on top of this, because we're all nerds, there was lots of mayor's race elections around the country. My favorite was in Cincinnati, where the vice president's half-brother got beat by 85 points in Cincinnati.
Nail biter, we call that a nail biter.
Ooh-wee. And then down in Texas, because we love to talk about congressional races, and you should know that seat. Remember, Mike, when we talked about the former mayor who had got elected to Congress in Houston dying during the State of the Union, like right after he got in a car and died?
Yeah.
When was the State of the Union? Like February?
February, March.
Yeah, the seat's been open since then.
That's bullshit.
The Texas governor won't fill it because they don't want to have representation. So they finally had a primary last night, and there were 16 people running. A young African-American brother named Christian Menifee got first place, got 30%. An African-American woman got like 23%, but there'll be a runoff now. The seat still won't be filled now. till December, Mike. That seat will stay open almost a year. I've got some things I want to talk about, but I want to kick to you on with all the things that are happening in all the elections around the country. And you can just take your pick. What was the thing that surprised you the most?
Well, the margins, I mean, the polling missed the intensity of Democrats. Usually it's missing the intensity of Republicans. Pollsters are going to take another ass kicking on why nobody was picking up on the intensity of the Democratic base. I think for guys, old school guys like you and I, you could kind of feel it on the ground. These No Kings rallies really mattered. They were a measure of anger, of rage, of sentiment. Look, this is the first time in 8 months where people had the opportunity to go vote with their middle finger against Donald Trump. This is the first time you could go do something, and they did it in huge numbers. So that margin was shocking. The depressed Republican turnout is a really important indicator too, because a lot of Republicans just sat it out. They're just like, we know this is fucked. We know this is bad. We know our guy's bad, but what are we going to do? And so they stayed home. Really low MAGA and ruby red precincts in the country last night. And Latino voters obviously come back. Cannon should spend a lot of time on this, being the Latino Vote Podcast. But they didn't come back to 2018 numbers. And what we really need to focus on is turnout, turnout, turnout. Because as I've been saying, Democrats have been having a tough time for 3 decades with young male Latino voters. Now it's Republicans' turn to have that problem with that same voter. These are not party-aligned voters. This is not anchored in partisanship. And if you look at counties like Passaic, let me read you some quick data here, Chuck, because I think you'll appreciate this. The 3 top Latino counties in New Jersey.
You're going to talk about Passaic, Hudson, and Cumberland.
Yeah, these shifts that have happened. These were Murphy, Governor, Democratic incumbent Murphy districts by single digits. They moved to Trump, which are 23, 24 point shifts, and then back to Mikey Sherrill by like 23 points, which is a 40-point shift.
Let me give you the numbers so you can react to them. In Passaic, Mikey Sherrill gets plus 15. Now, that same county a year ago, Trump was plus 3. In 2021, the last time they had a governor's election, so we're now measuring off year to off year, which is actually more correct, it was Murphy plus 4. So you went from Murphy plus 4 to Trump plus 3 to Sherrill plus 15. And this is Passaic. This is the largest Latino county in New Jersey.
Now, let me talk about that real quick. So thanks for having the numbers. You've got the numbers at your disposal all the time because you're a little bit more on top of it. As you said, apples to apples. If you look at the off term to the off term compared to the presidential, what that's telling us is this lower propensity, lower information voter with higher turnout is breaking more Republican. That's one of the conclusions I think it's fair to draw. That voter is not showing up in special elections. It's not showing up in midterms. This is exactly the challenge that Democrats had when you and I were kids growing up in the business. It's now flipped. And so in the next presidential election, my big fear, Chuck, and I've been saying this over and over on this podcast, is the Democrats are going to start taking the lessons of this election and the midterms that will be good for them in 2026 and do exactly what they did in 2018, which is go right back, not solving the problem, not fixing the middle class problem, just saying, see, they love us. They really do love us. When the truth of the matter is, it's not that they love you, it's just that they really hate the other guys. And that set them up for this rightward shift that everybody's going like, what the hell's going on? And start burning their hair. If the Democrats have just such an enormous opening right now to go get these voters back and say, we heard you, we get it, we're not going to do it again. Let's roll up our sleeves and start fixing blue collar working class problems, and that gets rid of Trumpism. That's how you do it. I mean, what are your thoughts?
You're spot on. I said to my wife yesterday, I'm like, the worst thing that could happen to us is we really kick ass and blow things out on Tuesday. And then Democrat and white consultants everywhere say, we got it all figured out. We knew this was just a blip in time. I can give some precautionary tales to it. Look, but I'm also going to say, I'm not going to take victory away from all these good candidates and all these good folks who ran good races. They won big, and they should get all the props for that. I'm going to start in Passaic County. Mike wanted me to talk about it last time. I wouldn't know for purpose because, Mike, we spent and got some real money to do real work there for 6 weeks leading into the election in Passaic County specifically. Oh, the New Jersey coordinated campaign spent $500,000 with my firm just knocking on doors, only Latino drop-off voter doors and only in Latino precincts, all in Spanish and English. We had hundreds of canvassers on the ground for almost 2 months. So what I was hearing at the door, and I didn't want to talk about it here because I know we're so widely listened to, I didn't want to kind of give, I saw things happening. Now, would they really turn out? I didn't know that. A bad consultant would say, sure, we knew all along. I didn't fucking know, but they did. And two things struck me. And one was this affordability issue that you've been talking about. One is they were really pissed at Donald Trump, mostly around affordability, some about immigration, because it's a heavy immigrant community in Passaic, heavy Dominican, Puerto Rican, others, a lot of Dominicans, pissed off Dominicans. And this issue of insurance premiums that I didn't know was such a big deal, and the utility prices were two neck and neck at the top always. And I realized when I would have conversations with the canvassers, it's because these folks are having to write those checks every month. It's like going to the gas station. And I talked to my son about this morning in Pittsburgh. He goes, "It's just crazy, Dad." He goes, "Our utility bills in Pennsylvania have doubled." And I said, well, that was what I'd hear in New Jersey. So these utility bills and the cost of insurance. The cost of insurance is something that I think somebody in Democratic leadership had gotten wind of. I saw it at the doors. These companies that are like raping and pillaging people for health care, they're getting their premiums now. They know things are going up. And it's just like beating them over the head when at the same time, to your point, Mike, hamburger meat, coffee, basic necessities. And this was the perfect storm in them, to your point, having some way to lash out. It wasn't that nobody said, Mikey Sherrill is my savior and is greatest. They liked her. They had nothing bad to say about her, but she wasn't having a Mondani moment, or she wasn't having a Bernie moment, or a Trump moment for that matter. But people were fucking pissed about Trump. Does this sound like it's tracking for you?
100%, man. Everybody listen to that, pause that, rewind it, listen to it again, and then pause it, rewind it, and listen to it again. What Chuck just said is everything. The real danger of this moment is the Democrats believing their own press releases. This is about Trump's failure, and that leaves you a big opening to get these guys back. But you got to worry about the price of gas. You got to worry about rent. You've got to worry about those things that Mamdani was talking about. Say what you will. Like, I don't know what the fear is in the Democratic establishment about a guy. You may not like his ideas, but he's talking about it and people are responding to it. You're not talking about it is the problem in the first place. And if you don't have solutions, then what are you doing in the arena anyway? Like, the Democratic coalition won from Mamdani last night to Spanberger. Like, it's a big coalition if you're talking about the economy. Most of the opening is because of Trump's failure. This dude he gave back the Latino numbers last night is a return to 2016 numbers. The Republicans have lost all of their gains. And if they don't learn the lesson of becoming a working class party again, man, like I don't know what to say, but I think you're so right, Chuck. Like, I've heard you for a long time, and I'm not a Democrat, so I don't know the culture, the hierarchy of the organization. You got a consulting class that's fucking way out of touch, man. Like, they're speaking to like the corporate clients they have in their repertoire that pay them the big money that approach the economy from like a 1980s Republican perspective. You're talking to people that are like, my electric bill went up $18 this month. I don't have $18. That's what gets me a week worth of gas to my work. Like, I don't have it. Those are the problems that this revolt, this rage, and its rage is emanating from, because these wild swings are a rejection of whichever party is in power. And Latinos, as I've said before, they're not a swing voter, they're a spurned voter. We're desperate. It's bad out there.
Three big villains in last night's elections in New Jersey, and then I'll get to Virginia, was Donald Trump, utility companies, and insurance companies. People hate those three things, and they have to deal with them all the time. And I think that any Democrat who was watching last night for 30 seconds knows that the through line to what you described between Mamdani, Sherrill, and even what you saw probably in Georgia is folks were talking about affordability. The things that me and you've been talking about for a while, they were running ads on it. As I told you, my script, I didn't get into great detail about what we were talking to Latinos about, was about affordability. That's what the midterms are going to be won on. Now, do we have enough time in these two states to make things better? Can Democrats who still aren't in charge of anything in Washington? I think there was a lesson learned. Like now we can, what do you say, Mike? We can pull jaws of victory from defeat or whatever that thing is because we can screw this up. But I think last night was so easy to read to know that that's what it was. It was a frustration around affordability. My next lesson for y'all is in Virginia to also beat your chest, be happy, but let me give you a word of caution. When you're talking about this is for the nerds. And again, this is not me hating on my own team. We won last night. We won big. I am going to be at the lead of the parade, and my firm had a lot to do with it. We ran digital ads. We texted 500,000 young people in Virginia last night for next gen. Like we were all in this thing. I can't talk about it till today, and we'll go even deeper on other podcasts of what I was learning on the text messages. But one little thing stuck to me last night for those of you who are saying, oh my God, there's these dramatic swings in Northern Virginia. And there were. Like Mike tweeted last night that, Mike Madrid, that every county in Virginia moved to the left. Even Trump, that he won by 80, moved 4 more points to the left. Every single county moved. Republicans this morning saying we had a bad candidate, and they did. And it was so bad for the Republicans that even the guy that we've made fun of on this podcast that was texting death threats to people won. Her wave pulled him across, for God's sakes. But the point I want to give you, Mike, for you to give, I want to unleash you on this because this is kind of set you up for this thing that you talk about because you're a numbers guy. In a place like Manassas Park, Virginia, it's in Northern Virginia. Manassas Park, Mike will remember because he lived here, now is like the half of the population is Latino in Manassas Park, Virginia. All immigrants, mainly El Salvadorians, a lot of Mexicans, but it's an immigrant heavy place. Now there's second and third generations there, 46% of the vote. Now that vote last night, Harris won that county by, or this little city, Manassas Park, she won it by 20 points in 2024. Just a year ago, she won it by 20. Heavy Democratic area, you know? It's a Latino area. It's a working class area. Last night, Spanberger wins by 46 points. 46 points. But that's not the point I want to make. Oh, here it is, Mike. It's a city of 17,000 people. The difference is, y'all, is that not all the same amount of people. This is where the numbers are different. The amount of turnout in 2024 was so much higher than it was yesterday in this little township, where 70% of the people that live there voted in 2024, and she still wins by 20. Last night, only 50% of the people voted. This is the point Mike's making. So when you start looking at apples to apples, sure, we overperformed and we won, yes. But it was a different electorate last night if you're comparing these to what 2026 will look like and definitely what a presidential turnout will look like. We have become, and it makes me sad and makes my stomach turn upside down to say this, but we have now I don't know the big words, but we have now for sure made it to where our people turn out in special elections, off year elections, and they'll probably turn out more in 2026 when a lot of these Trump underperforming folks stayed their ass at home. And that was every county's numbers were just like that little township, Mike.
Yeah, the way to look at it, if you're of a certain age like Chuck and I are, is this is what Republicans used to win low turnout special elections. Now it's Democrats who win them, right? And the fear is the fear of Republicans in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s was when we have these big elections and lower information voters show up, they vote for the Democrats and we get our butts kicked. That's what happens to the Democrats now. These higher turnout elections, which are Latinos, by the way, low information, decidedly more male, decidedly under 30, much more lower information. They show up and they're voting for the Republican Party, which, by the way, leads to a strategy, Chuck, which you ought to be talking about with your folks is start running ballot measures right now. Go win everything you can right now. Have as many special elections and ballot measures as you can in the off year as you can and win, because that's where you're going to win a lot of stuff. That's what Republicans used to do.
Let me give you the rest of these numbers so that you can react to them. In Manassas Park, Virginia, there are 17,000 people that live there. In the presidential election, Mike, about 6,000 people cast their vote in that little township. 6,000. And Kamala wins by 20 points. Last night, 3,900 people voted, and we won by 42 points.
There you go. Send me those numbers, man. That's the data that I'm looking for. I'm impressed and glad that you have it. That's the whole ball game of what's going on here, guys. And that differential is where history is made. That's the difference between Kamala Harris winning and losing and Donald Trump winning and losing. By the way, Jay Jones, the embattled, scandal-ridden, candidate that you and I were talking about, which I was saying would probably pull this out, he got more votes, more raw votes than Kamala Harris did.
Oh, wow.
That's a big deal. That's how depressed the Republican turnout was. And that's how partisanized and pissed off I think Democrats are. It's like, I don't care. I don't care. Anything with an R after their name is going to have a price to pay. And you saw it all over the country, man. When Georgia, you got these Georgia commissioners winning statewide by 20 points. Like, this is an obliteration. This is a wake-up call. It's a message. Now, will Donald Trump be able to listen to it or not? I don't know. But I will tell you, congressional Republicans are absolutely quaking in their boots. Mike Johnson is not going to be the speaker after November of 2026. There's just no way.
I think they knew this, and I think they knew that this was a possibility, they being the Republicans. That's why we got thrust into this redistricting shit that we've gotten ourselves thrust into. I think that Donald Trump's team, and I give them credit for understanding that it was going to be this bad. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I knew we were going to win last night. I didn't think we were going to win by what we won by. Again, I'm a bad consultant because I tell you the truth. And I knocked on hundreds of thousands of doors in New Jersey. But they know what's coming. And the only way they can stop it is if they do what they're doing with redistricting. And now California's in and all the others. There was a lot of elections around the country that do have implications other than these big three and other than New York. And that's like we talk about Bucks County and the collar counties around Philadelphia. Last night, there were school board elections and city council elections in like Bucks County, where they threw all the Republicans who had won just like 4 years ago and had taken a majority in a lot of these school boards and city councils, just got obliterated last night, Mike. Because
and that matters generationally. Because
that's what I was getting at.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you go.
Well, that matters because in a super wave election like this, you obliterate the bench of future legislators, of future Congress members, of future statewides 4, 6, 8 years down the road. That matters, guys. That matters because what happens is Republican consultants have to go out and start recruiting people from the local chamber of commerce to run for school board again or city council instead of running their city council member and positioning them to run for the state legislature or for Congress. They got to go back to zero here, or at least get set way back to go. Don't collect 200 on the monopoly board. It's a lot of rebuilding, and in a big wave from top to bottom. When you get wiped out, the infrastructure of your party really gets taxed. And so this is a big moment. Like I said, this isn't just a blue state phenomenon. This isn't just about New Jersey and Virginia. Under normal circumstances, it would be if Mikey Sherrill won by 6. You could say, Spanberger wins by 9 or 10. Yeah, I get it. Prop 50 in California is hitting 64%. I mean, the doors are blown off here. And that changes the dynamics nationally on absolutely everything. So, look, still a long way to look for turnout numbers. I'm going to be nerding out on that. I think the narrative will have already moved on. It probably already has by the time we actually get the numbers. But the numbers that you were talking about on turnout in Manassas, Chuck, are just critical to look out for turnout. For those of you that really want to know what's going on, we'll be exploring this more and more over the coming weeks as the data becomes certified. That's the real message. That turnout is everything, because everything on top of that differential between 3,900 and 6,000 voters in Manassas is the difference between a 40% performance for Democrats and a 50% performance. That's what makes the difference in elections.
And let me put that in even more simplistic terms for the midterm elections. What this will come down to now is going to be an argument within each party of between persuasion audiences and turnout audiences. Because what you're going to have is every midterm election since I was 25 years old, we knew that the goal was there were these drop-off voters. Drop-off voters are voters who always vote in a presidential year but don't vote in an off year, which is the every 2-year cycle, right? Those were always Democratic voters because we were the poor working class Chuck Roaches of our party. The question becomes, do you go and target drop-off voters? Now, there's enough modeling and data now where you can actually do both, because you can go in and model a new Democratic voter who's registered Democrat who but a longtime Democrat in the Texas Valley who's a drop-off voter, I will bet your sweet ass right now that voter votes Republican because it's just they've just moved too far from not to be, and they've never changed their registration. And this is where the campaigns become real strategy, and where Mike Madrid and Chuck Rocha has made our living is like that's where the strategy of who do you persuade and who do you turn out. Because last night, all the Democrats turned out and all voted for the local Democrats in every race nationwide. It was just like when I said on this podcast, or I said this morning on TV, and gave Donald Trump credit. And I do give him credit in his campaign. They improved their numbers in every county across America. Whatever they did worked, and it worked because a lot of new people came and voted. But an off-year election, y'all, if you learn one thing from this podcast today, it's not the elections we saw last night, and it's damn sure not the turnout you're going to see in a presidential election. And a strategy becomes, who do you turn out? We know now the message. Even a blind mule knows the message, and it is talking about bills and affordability. But what we don't know is who do you take that solace of message? Do you take it to that poor working class guy who's definitely a drop-off voter, who voted for Donald Trump? Do we take the chance that we get him back? Or do we take the chance when we get him back, he sees an ad 4 weeks before the election and says, if we get you back, the Democrats are going to turn your kid into a trans kid? Like whatever that little thing could be. This is where the strategy will come in, Mike.
So I'm glad you brought up the Texas seats because this is going to become the focus of a lot of furious debate. In a Democrat,
the dummy mander?
The dummy mander, right? If in a Democrat +9 environment, which this was even bigger than that, 3 of those 5 seats go back. And we just interviewed Bobby Polito. Bobby would be being sworn in as a congressman after this if the same environment holds up. So, and that begs a whole lot of questions, right? Is not only did the Texas Republicans make some really bad assumptions, which you and I have been saying for weeks now. We were the first ones saying, hey, these Republicans are making a big mistake. But the bigger question is, for me anyway, and I was just thinking about this right now. I'm going to pull this data. I don't have the answers, but I'm willing to bet in California, with the turnout numbers that we had last night, the Democrats would have unseated those 5 Republicans that they just drew out of lines anyway. You didn't need to redraw the lines to give good old fashioned ass kicking like this, and that was always my concern. Is this was predictable? I mean, you and I were, and again, these aren't the midterms. A lot can happen, but guys, the economy is getting worse. By the way, it could be a worse environment for Republicans than we had last night. In fact, I think that's likely. You could see even bigger margins in the midterm. And if that happens, all of this race to game the rules in red states and blue states not only doesn't matter, but it rips up the rules of the game, and the outcome is essentially the same. Am I making sense here, Chuck?
You are. And I think that the one thing that you hit on is about things getting worse is last weekend, just 4 days ago, I was in Tennessee, far eastern Tennessee, right by Virginia. And I was out, I mean, when we're talking about rural, it makes East Texas look like a metropolis. But I was talking to some old hayseed farm boys out there. I went fishing with a buddy of mine who I do some work for, doing a little strategy session on the river while we were doing some trout fishing. And the local guide there was who guides about 120 days a year. He makes $350 a trip. So he's making maybe 40 G's a year. I don't know how much of that he counts, and I don't care how much he does, but his wife stays at home with their 8 and 9-year-old, and he told me she was on government assistance for SNAP benefits because they only make obviously 40 grand a year to hold the whole family. Now he does some side work, he said, for a boat company, and I'm not going to give you his name because I didn't tell him I'd talk about this in public, so I'm not naming him. But listening to that, he said, Chuck, the way I look at it, he's a staunch Mike conservative. And he said, and I quote, he goes, oh, I don't really like politics, but I guess I'm more conservative. I used to kind of agree some with the Democrats, but now I can't just agree with nothing they do. But I don't really like Donald Trump either. But, I'm a Christian and I'm like, blah, blah. He was just falling in line with these stereotypes again, big old white boy. But the moral of that story is he said, when we used to get our food stamps, he said we could go get a month of food with that money. And it would do us worth a month of food. He said, but with the way that prices have went up, the food stamps that we get have stayed the same, and it only lasts us now about 2 weeks, and we have to figure something else out. That's real shit. And that's a
That's real shit.
conservative white boy from Tennessee talking about the way that this actually hits him. And then talking last night with my son, who's a steam fitter in Pittsburgh, about how much his this is the most underreported thing. When Mike Madrid talks about why aren't we calling these tariffs a tax, that's exactly what he's talking about, because people understand taxes. They don't understand tariffs, but they do understand when shit costs more because they're now having to pay more in taxes on this product. And people are really hurting last night. And the Republicans took it in the ass because of it, because everybody was looking for somebody to blame.
And what's interesting is I get the cultural sensitivity of Democrats not being comfortable with running against tax increases, because let's face it, Democrats like to tax things. But when you run a tax to pay for things like healthcare, people will pay for that. People will take a tax increase for something that they care about. If you're taxing Canada and Mexico for lumber and drywall and driving up the cost of housing, they're not going to put up with that shit. That's what this was. If you say we're gonna, you're gonna have a tax to keep your healthcare premiums down, to your point, with some of what you were seeing on the ground in New Jersey, people will pay for that or invest in that, as the consulting class says. And I think that that's something that people really, really need to understand in the Democratic Party as part of being a populist. And as it starts to refine its working class message, is the working class is okay with some taxes. It's not okay with all taxes. And that's the party the Democratic Party is going to have to be if it's going to get back to these voters again. I can't for the life of me understand why Democrats haven't beaten the crap out of the Republicans for these tax increases. But look, the good news is, and again, I'm always a downer here on a lot of this stuff, just because I'm so frustrated with what's so obvious to me, at least anyway, from my opinion. The good news is the people are stepping up. The country's broken. A big wide swath of the country has broken the fever here. And I don't know. I mean, Trump's going to keep doubling and tripling down, but I know every single Republican member of Congress is going to be sleeping with one eye open and looking over their shoulder, because they know this is a terrible environment for them. This is the Senate coming into play. This is the Republicans could lose the Senate in this environment. And the House you could see some really significant traction in the House with a much bigger wave than people are anticipating, based off of the old math, which is, that's a Trump +5 seat. It's safe. I don't think that it is anymore.
Let me give you a little scenario. Let's say I'll get to the House. We'll start with the Senate. In the Senate, if Democrats were to protect all their Senate races, and they probably will, where they have incumbents, they really don't have any vulnerable incumbents except for in Georgia. Do you see what happened in Georgia last night? Shit, they swung 21 points. Like
21 points.
He's probably going to be okay, all soft. But what if we pick up a seat in North Carolina? Very doable. Popular governor. Pick up a seat in Maine. I don't know what's going to happen with Graham Plattner or the former. Either one of them probably could beat her right now. That's 2 seats. Now we're only 1 seat away from tying the Senate, and you have Ohio with Sherrod Brown running. You have Alaska.
That's what I was going to say, Alaska. Keep your eyes open on Alaska.
Who's super popular, and Alaska's very independent, very libertarian. Like, there's definitely a path that looked crazy when we talked about it 6 months ago that now is like, oh, shit. Yeah, this is real. And then when we get to the House, y'all, about 35 seats in play, that's going to change a little bit with redistricting. But to Mike's point, if the wave I'm not even saying the wave, I'm going to say half of the wave. If we got half of the wave that we saw last night on election night, Bobby Polito is a congressman. And not only a congressman, he wins by 5 or 6 points. And then the new Latino seat that they drew between San Antonio and Austin, that is an R+6. That's a 70% Latino district because of Latinos and Trump. And there is a U.S. Marine running, John Lira, in that seat. Great profile. Looks like Ruben Gallego. Actually served with Ruben Gallego. That's the kind of Democrat you want in these seats. Democrats have done a good job. Bobby Polito down in Texas 15, who actually you're going to get to hear from this week. We interviewed him. We've held his interview back till after Election Day. John Lira in Texas 35. There's lots of others, good folks running. But then it opens up other seats. And with what just happened in California, you can start seeing how this could be a real check, even if you just run as a check on Donald Trump, without having to say what you're for, but you're going to have to say what you're going to do about affordability. And you're going to have to pass things to make Donald Trump sign them so that you can make people's lives more affordable, especially around health insurance premiums, which has really been the driver of one of the biggest surprises for me about what we saw. Mike, did you see those updated numbers I just sent you?
I'm looking at them right now, and I appreciate everybody's patience because Chuck and I are literally getting data in and sharing it with each other as the show's going on because we're learning as we go here too.
Because it looks like, Mike, you got back to pretty close to the Murphy numbers on most of them, if not almost all but one or two. And then obviously it's easy to see she exceeded Harris, but there's definite movement. And y'all should know that the New York media market, let's talk about this for a second while Mike's looking at his numbers, is that it's hard to reach Latinos in West New York. It's hard to reach them in Passaic. That's why we were knocking on doors, because it's the New York City media market and it is inundated with all kinds of shit on the media. So you can't just go up like you can in Nebraska and run some TV commercials and move things. It's New York where there's all kinds of stuff coming at you every day. Somebody we're definitely going to have on the podcast, we're probably going to have her on in the next week or two, Mike, is Patricia Campos Medina. She was the highest ranking Latino on the Mikey Sherrill campaign. She's one of my oldest friends. I'll remind you that we ran her for U.S. Senate when Menendez got in trouble. And the Asian congressman, Kim from Southern Georgia, won. Obviously, he was the congressman. But now she's set up as the queen maker because she was the head Latino of the whole campaign. And she was made the co-chair of the campaign by Mikey right after the primary and was with her through the primary. So she was the one who ironically brought in a lot of new consultants, a lot of new faces into the party that says, look, the same old folks have been running the same old Union City, Passaic, and West New York shit. We're going to shake it up and do some different things. I give her credit. We'll have her on to kind of talk about her strategy because she was the brains behind that.
Love it. Love it. We want to pick her brain for a good hour and find out what they were doing on the ground. Obviously, you were part of that team, and you can talk a little bit more openly about what you were seeing now that the race is over. So I'm looking forward to that. You ought to be writing an op-ed and put some articles together on that too quickly, just so that you get the right credit. And a lot of these campaigns wake up and realize that this is going to be the key to what a majority is going to look like. I mean, let's dive into that. In fact, maybe we ought to look for some of those victories throughout the country and start having some of those folks on as guests.
It's a good idea. You know what we didn't talk about because it was so crazy last night, but I want to ask you because I love asking you about shit I think about, not tell you about it in advance. Did you see what happened in Chicago? Did you see that an hour before the filing deadline ended in Chicago, that Chewy Garcia decided not to run for Congress and his chief of staff just so happened to file her paperwork the last 30 minutes?
That's some dirty Chicago politics, man. Yeah, and I was going to send you that when I saw that because it's Chewy, we both know, and we got to get Chewy. I mean, I don't know if we'd be willing to talk and have that conversation, but yeah, that's a little bit. You can't do that in California, by the way. There's a rule.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
y'all hippies, y'all always being democratic and shit.
Yeah, always trying to do good government. You try pulling that last minute shit in California. What happened here, guys, is the sitting incumbent congressman. Obviously, no one's going to run against the sitting incumbent congressman. Waits till the last day, and then his chief of staff files papers so that nobody else, there's no primary, basically gives his seat to somebody else.
That's what happened in Chicago.
California, and it extends the filing deadline for a set period of time. I don't know how many days it's extended. If you try to do it within the last week or so, there's a new extension of the deadline so that it gives people the opportunity to run. So you can't do that kind of shenanigans.
So keeping track on this, one, we'll speak. Chewy's a good friend of mine, but should know that I haven't talked to Chewy, but I do know that there has been some people in his family immediate that have had health problems. And I bet there's a reason why he's not running. And I know that Chewy probably wanted to run and he was very able to, but he's been dealing with a lot of things that I'm not going to talk about in his personal life, and they can deal with it. And his chief of staff is a wonderful Latina who will do a great job if that's in case who's going to be the nominee there. So I'm not nothing against her, but I will say on the Latino Vote podcast in a Latino seat in Chicago, There's probably 70% Latino population. Think about this. And I don't know if it'll happen. There's a bunch of what ifs, but Mike Madrid, what they did is legal. It happens a lot in Chicago and other places. But think about if the governor of Illinois opens up redistricting and they redraw those lines a little bit and they reopen up the filing deadlines, there'll be 78 people running for Congress in that seat. I'm just going to let y'all know that now. I'm already getting calls from some really good friends of mine and yours, Mike, who are actually thinking about looking at it. And we'll leave that for another day. But lots of Latino leaders in Chicago would love to be the congressperson up there and doing that work, which is with redistricting, we really don't know what's going to happen with a lot of these seats. But, anything could come down, and keep track on what could happen in Florida and what's going on in other places. I saw this morning, Mike, in Kansas, it's been the first state to step back and say, no, we're not going to do it. Like, we are good. And it's been the first one to really stand up to the Trump administration
Well, New
around
Hampshire
this.
did too. New Hampshire
Did
said
they?
we're not doing that. Yeah, yeah. So,
Oh,
but it's good. But that's good. It means that people are starting to say no. Look, Virginia, now that Span merger, you got a Democratic governor and 64 seats. Like, people thought 60 was a reach. There's 64. Like, why wouldn't they open their redistricting and draw out three? They think they can draw three more Democratic seats. And then you go down to Miami. You had the first Democratic top vote getter for mayor of Miami. You're going to have a Democratic mayor of Miami now. And I haven't looked at the Latino vote numbers down there with the Cubans and Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, but think that this was a beatdown, bro. This changes everything.
You stay tuned and stay as part of what we've been talking about. But the biggest thing is, for me, yes, Democrats, you did a great job. You talked about affordability. You won some races. You overperformed. But keep your eye on the turnout number for all of you super nerds like us. Performance of an off-year election compared to a presidential election, when folks are like, well, they overperformed Kamala Harris by 35 points. Absolutely, they did. And they should get credit for that. But when you're measuring in the background and you're putting together strategy based off of those analytics of those numbers, know that you're weighing presidential turnout against an off-year election turnout. And then when you're talking about 2026, it's somewhere in between the off year and the 28 turnout, so that we're not all giving ourselves a false high. So we're looking at realistic numbers. And Democrats, we're figuring out how we're going to talk about affordability to our universe of persuasion audiences and our universes of base audiences of turnout universes. This is where the rubber really meets the roads, and what we're really going to dig into here on the Latino Vote podcast. Mike, you got any other elections to talk about before we take the folks out?
Boy, I'm finding more and more elections as I keep digging through this stuff, sifting through. At a certain point, you can kind of get a little bit cracked out on this election night data. I mean, we all live for election night, so it gives us a good week to kind of just assess and sift through. But sometimes, Chuck, the through lines are so big that you can kind of miss the forest for the trees. And this is one of those election nights. Bottom line is, here's the big takeaways, my opinion, and I want to hear yours as we kind of sign off. Anti-Trump messaging is holding the Democratic coalition together. Anti-Trumpism is everything. His negatives are so big, so bad, so high. It's likely to carry in to a big night a year from now in the midterms. That's a big prognostication, big sweeping indictment, a big prediction to make, especially a year out, but I'm going to hold on to it. The second is it's bread and butter issues that you were finding in New Jersey. I'm especially intrigued by the healthcare costs and the insurance costs. Like, there's a huge lesson to be learned there. That's how you're going to get these voters back, and it's a massive opening for Democrats to find a real populist message, kind of the no tax on tips message, where people can just understand it, feel it, relate it, and go and grab it. And I think that's important. And the third, I think, is rage matters at this time. I feel better about the country's prospects, that people have finally woken up and realized, okay, this shit's bad. It's bad news, and they're rejecting it. The polls didn't capture the intensity that was here. The Republican base was depressed. They've got nothing to go and vote for. Independents broke massively towards the Democrats, or away from the Republicans, as we should say, and Dems largely showed up. So that's a winning coalition, and I'm glad to see it. I think the energy's with the Democrats, the wind's at their back, and let's hope it continues on through the midterms.
For next week, I'd like for you to come back, give you a little homework, because that's what I do, is come back to us now that we know what the maps are going to be in California, and give us a little idea where you think these Republicans are going to have to move to run. I'm really curious about what's going to happen in the Central Valley, what's going to happen with Ruiz and around that whole Orange County shakeup with Kim. Come back to us and give us some updates on that. This just in this morning or last night, Alex Padilla, the senator, said he's not going to run for governor. That's going to be a big, like, is somebody else? I want Mike to give us some of that next week on where the governor's race is and then where these new congressional races are, because this is going to be a big part of who controls Congress. And then also we'll have more numbers by then. We can get a little more deeper on this stuff. For all of you out there who's campaign hacks, who were up all night last night or this week, I see you. I love you. Drink some water. That whiskey's good, but put it down. Have some more water. You don't have to smoke all them cigarettes. We love you. Call your mama if you still got her. Tell her you're alive. You've lived through election day. Until next week, me and Mike will see you then.